The Drowned Boy of Blackwater Lake. Part 1. The Whisper Beneath the Water. The lake was a black wound stitched into the forest. Locals called it Blackwater, and most avoided it, even in the daylight. Too deep, too still, too old. A place with no bottom and no echo. The kind of water that didn't ripple, it swallowed. They said it was haunted, but small towns say that about a lot of places. What set Blackwater Lake apart was that the stories never went away. Every few years, a camper went missing. A boat overturned. Sometimes, whole families packed up in the dead of night and just vanished. The town called it coincidence. But the older ones, the ones who still remembered the boy, they knew better. It started 30 years ago. 5 boys, drunk on youth and cruelty, dragged a kid named Caleb Hines out to the middle of the lake on a rust-bitten rowboat. Caleb was scrawny, stuttered when he spoke, and wore the same ratty hoodie every day no matter the weather. Easy prey. They tied a cinder block to his ankle, laughing like jackals. Said it was a joke. Said he could swim out of it if he really tried. He didn't. He thrashed. Screamed. Then sank. The boys panicked, swore oaths to keep it buried. They tossed the rope and block overboard, rowed back to shore, and told everyone Caleb had run away. No one ever found the body. But sometimes, on quiet nights, people claimed they heard splashing in the center of the lake, too rhythmic to be fish, too heavy to be natural. Some swore they saw something just below the surface. Eyes wide and staring. Skin bloated and pale, bloated fingers still reaching. Most wrote it off. Until the death started. Now, 30 years later. When I got the call, it was already past midnight. I was halfway through a bottle of whiskey and neck-deep in case files from Maine. The caller ID was blocked, but the voice that rasped through the line was unmistakably shaken. "You're the one who deals with ghosts, right?" I didn't correct her. "I'm listening," I muttered, setting the bottle aside. "Blackwater Lake. People are dying. They're kids, the ones from back then. They're getting picked off one by one. And their families. The killer doesn't stop. He takes everyone." I leaned forward, all the haze of drink burning off in a flash of clarity. "What's the pattern?" I asked. "Every victim's a blood relative of those boys. And their houses, they flood. Water everywhere. But no burst pipes. No leaks. It just appears. My name's Jack Mercer. Some folks call me a ghost hunter, others call me worse. I've been chasing monsters for a long time, real and otherwise. If what this woman was telling me was true, I had a good idea of what I was dealing with. A revenant. A soul too full of rage to cross over. Something too angry to rot. By the time I rolled into Black Hollow, it was just before dawn. Fog clung to the road like it was alive. Pine trees leaned in on either side, their trunks skeletal in the high beams. The kind of place where secrets rotted in the soil. I headed straight to the lake. Needed to see it for myself. It was worse than I imagined. The water looked thick, not like it was full of silt or algae, but like it had a weight of its own. A darkness that wasn't just lack of light. The fog hung lower here, heavy like wet wool. As I walked the edge, something snagged my boot. I looked down. Rope. Old frayed. Tied in a loop. the kind used for anchors. Or for weights. I didn't touch it. Instead, I followed the shoreline until I found the old pier. The boards were weathered but sturdy, leading out 20 feet into the stillness. No birds. No insects. Just silence so loud it made your ears ring. About halfway down, I saw the first offering. A child's shoe, waterlogged and pale. Set neatly at the edge like someone left it there on purpose. Not dropped. Placed. I got the names later from the sheriff. Of the 5 original boys, only 2 were still alive. The others, drowned in bathtubs, found dead in flooded basements, or washed up on shore with lungs full of lake water despite being found miles inland. The survivors had families, wives, kids, grandkids. Now they were dying too. Not fast. Not clean. One by one, like a curse working its way down a bloodline. The sheriff didn't want to help, but after I dropped a few details that hadn't been made public, like the bloody watermarks shaped like hands on the kitchen ceiling of the Dawson house, he changed his tune. His name was Rayner. He had that look small-town cops get when they've seen too much and been able to do too little. He told me about the last incident. A teenage girl, Emily Voss, granddaughter of Alan Voss, one of the original 5. She was found in her bedroom. Doors locked. No signs of forced entry. Her lungs were filled with lake water. Only thing out of place was the floor, soaked through, black with mildew. And the walls? They were covered in writing. One word, scratched over and over in a child's hand. Help! That night, I stayed in a rundown motel off Route 9. Didn't bother unpacking. Just sat in the dark, flipping through old newspaper clippings and weather reports. I noticed something. Every death had taken place near the anniversary of Caleb's drowning. 30 years to the day. I checked the calendar. Tonight was the exact date. Somewhere out there, in the middle of that godless lake, a boy was still drowning. Every night. Over and over again. His body never found. His soul never laid to rest. And now the ones who laughed while he sank were hearing his laughter in return. Only it wasn't innocent anymore. It was angry. Wet. Cold. I loaded up my gear. Salt. Iron. My old revolver. And a relic I hadn't touched in years. A shard of mirror blessed by an Ojibwe elder I once helped back in Michigan. If Caleb was still out there. If he was watching. I had to make contact. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't already hearing the water, even before I left the room. Dripping. From the ceiling. Even though it hadn't rained in days. Part 2. The House That Wept. The Voss house sat on the edge of town like a tomb. Faded blue siding curled back from the wood like peeling skin, and the windows, all 7 of them, were stained with black streaks running down the glass. Not grime. Not time. Water. I parked at the curb and killed the engine. No wind. No birds. Just that stillness that clings to places where something terrible happened. I stepped out, boots crunching gravel, and watched the top floor of the house. Something moved behind the curtain. Sheriff Rayner hadn't wanted to give me the address. Claimed the family was grieving, but I could hear it in his voice. He was scared. Not just for the Voss family, but for himself. These deaths weren't random. They were calculated. Vengeance with a timeline. And Rayner's wife? Her maiden name was Dawson. That made him a target too. The front door was ajar. Water had swollen the wood, making it bulge against the frame. I had to shove my shoulder into it to get through. The air inside was humid. Not just damp, tropical. Like I'd stepped into the lungs of something alive. The foyer floor was slick beneath my boots. Water pooled at my feet, and overhead, the ceiling sagged with moisture. "Hello?" I called out. Silence answered. I reached for my EMF detector, not that I needed it. I could feel the energy in the room. Oppressive. Sad. And angry. I found the girl's bedroom at the end of the hall, third door on the left. The walls were still wet. Words scratched into the paint. Hundreds of them. Most were the same. Help. Can't breathe. Still here. Why? But one sentence stood out. It was carved above the bed, deeper than the others, with something that had splintered the drywall itself. They held me down. There was no mistaking it. This was Caleb. His memory. His rage. Etched into the bones of the house. Something creaked above me. I turned. Nothing. I scanned the floor and followed the faintest trail of footprints, small, bare, waterlogged. They led down the stairs and vanished near the back door. Except the back door was locked. From the inside. I circled the house, drawn to the lake view behind it. There, past the rotting swing set and a crumbling dock, Blackwater Lake stretched out like a void. That's when I saw her. A figure standing knee-deep in the lake. Long hair matted to her back. Nightgown clinging to her skin. Unmoving. My first thought, Emily Voss. My second? Not anymore. I approached slowly, heart pounding. The water lapped against her thighs now, though she never moved. "Emily?" I called out. No answer. Then her head snapped toward me. Mouth wide. Too wide. Eyes black. Skin gray and sagging like it had spent too long submerged. She didn't scream. She gurgled. Then she ran. Straight toward me. Across the surface of the water. I stumbled back, reaching for the iron knife at my belt, but she didn't make it to shore. Halfway to me, she was yanked backward, something beneath the lake grabbing her by the legs and pulling her under. Her hand slapped the surface once. Then she was gone. The ripples vanished almost immediately. The lake returned to silence, like it had never been disturbed. That night, I stayed with Sheriff Rayner. His wife had taken the kids to her sister's 2 towns over. He wasn't sleeping. Just sat at the kitchen table nursing coffee like it was whiskey, eyes bloodshot. "I saw her," I told him. "Emily. Or what's left of her." He nodded, face pale. "She was the 4th, he said quietly. "After Alan Voss, there was Jeremy Price. Then Claire Dawson. Now Emily. 2 left," I muttered. He looked up at me. "I'm one of them, aren't I? Your wife's related. That's enough." He swallowed hard. "How do we stop it?" That's the part one didn't have an answer for. Not yet. At 3:17 a.m., I woke to the sound of water running. I sat bolt upright in the guest bed, adrenaline firing. It wasn't coming from the kitchen or bathroom. It was coming from beneath the bed. I leaned over. Slowly. Drip. Drip. A small puddle spread from under the frame. As I reached for the edge, I heard something laugh. A child's voice. Wet. Joyless. I yanked the blankets back. There was no one under the bed. But the sheets were soaked and scratched into the wood of the headboard, almost too faint to notice. I remember you. The next day, I went back to the lake. I brought a drone, figuring I could scope the center, maybe find something the police hadn't. But the moment the drone passed over the deepest part of the lake, the screen glitched. The feed cut to black. Then came back. Just static at first. Then, a face. Bloated. Waterlogged. White eyes open and watching. The drone spun wildly, losing control. I barely managed to steer it back before it crashed. When I pulled the footage later, the face wasn't there. But I saw it. It saw me. I went to the town records office. Found the original police report. Caleb's mother had filed a missing persons claim the night he vanished. The boys had claimed he never showed to meet them that day. The case was dropped. But the mother kept coming back. Week after week. Until she didn't. I tracked down her obituary. She drowned. In her own tub. Water boiled inside her lungs. The coroner couldn't explain it. And I found something else. A name I hadn't expected. Thomas Rayner. Sheriff Rayner's older brother. One of the original 5. Died in '96. Boat accident. His body was found. But his eyes were missing. That night, the whispering started. Every faucet in the house turned on at once. Water poured out, but it wasn't clear. It was dark. Thick. Red. I opened the bathroom door and nearly gagged. Written on the mirror in condensation. To left. Then I come for you. Part 3. The thing that drowns in mirrors. There's an old rule in the hunter's life. Never ignore the mirrors. If something from the other side wants you to see it, that's where it starts. Not with sound. Not with movement. With reflection. It's how they reach. And now this ghost, this revenant, knew my name. The day after the faucet incident, I took Rayner with me back to the lake. He didn't want to go, but I convinced him. Said if we didn't face it now, it'd keep coming. Closer. To left, I reminded him. You and the last survivor. Thomas Rayner's old friend. You know who it is? He nodded. Craig Shelby. Lives up by the quarry. Recluse. Drinks like a fish. Good. We find him. Tonight. But first, I needed to see what was under that lake. We rented a rowboat, the same make and model from 30 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on Rayner. His hands shook on the oars. I brought a sonar scanner, a waterproof cam, and a length of rope. The air above Blackwater Lake felt heavier than usual. I'd been in cursed places before. I knew when the veil thinned. We drifted out into the center, where the water was darkest. The sonar pinged something. Large. Stationary. 10 feet below the surface. But the camera? It didn't show a thing. Just bubbles. And something faint, like fabric. Torn red cloth. Floating just out of reach. Then the boat jerked. Hard. Like something had grabbed it from beneath. Raynor dropped an oar. I reached for the rope, ready to tie it off. But the second I touched the metal cleat, I heard him. A whisper. From the lake. From below. "You're too late." We made it back to shore, barely. Raynor didn't speak for a while. Just sat on the grass, staring at the black water like it owed him something. I asked him again. "What happened that night?" The truth. His jaw clenched. "I wasn't there. I was supposed to be. Got the flu. Thomas told me later. Said it was a joke gone too far. That Caleb just didn't come back up." "Did he tell you they tied him down?" Raynor's silence was answer enough. Craig Shelby lived in a collapsing ranch house behind the quarry. His yard was littered with beer cans and children's toys that hadn't been touched in years. He answered the door with a shotgun. "What do you want?" I showed him the EMF meter. "To save your life." "From what?" As if on cue, the hallway behind him groaned. The light bulb above us flickered. And somewhere in the back of the house, a faucet turned on. Full blast. We got inside fast. Raynor talked him down. I warded the windows with salt, iron shavings, and sprigs of white heather. Not a cure, but it would buy us time. Shelby looked older than his age. Yellow teeth. Eyes sunk deep into sockets. "I see him," he said, voice shaking. "In reflections. Mirrors. Water. My shaving razor. The goddamn toaster." "When was the first time?" I asked. Shelby's gaze unfocused. 30 years ago. Night after we left the lake. I looked in the mirror and he was behind me. Pale. Dripping. Just smiling. "What did you do?" "I smashed it. Every mirror I owned. But it didn't stop. I see him in puddles. Ice cubes. Windshields after the rain. Even piss in the toilet if the light's right." His voice cracked. "I can't get away from him." At 2 a.m., the house went silent. No wind. No pipes. Then, every window fogged up at once. And writing formed on the glass. "I'm still drowning. Feel it too." I grabbed the mirror shard, the one blessed in Michigan. Set it on the kitchen table and lit 4 candles around it. Then I placed a droplet of lake water in the center. The image that formed wasn't mine. It wasn't Raynor's. It was Caleb's. Not as he looked in life. As he looked now. His skin was torn in places. Bloated. Teeth too long. Eyes like sunken marbles. His mouth was open, whispering something over and over. I leaned closer. "Give them to me. Give them or drown. Drown with me." The candles snuffed out all at once. And then every mirror in the house shattered. Even the microwave. Raynor was bleeding from a gash on his cheek. Shelby was gone, bolted during the chaos. I found his front door wide open, water pooling on the welcome mat like he'd stepped into the lake itself. I followed the trail out back. To the quarry. And that's when I saw it. A figure, standing in the water at the quarry's base. Not Shelby. Caleb. Not a ghost anymore. He was becoming something else. His arms were too long. His jaw unhinged and swinging like it was broken. Water dripped upward from the surface into his mouth like he was drinking the lake back into himself. I called out, "Caleb!" He turned slowly and smiled. Not out of joy, out of promise. Then he vanished. We found Shelby's body the next morning, 30 feet down, in the lake, wrapped in ropes. Cinder block tied to his ankles. Same knot as before. Rayner vomited on the shoreline. One left now. Him. When we got back to the sheriff's house, the mirrors were covered in condensation. And in every single one, a shape moved. Closer. Not Caleb. Something he brought with him. Something that followed from the other side. That night, I dreamed I was drowning. But I wasn't afraid. I was waiting. Part 4. The Bottom Has a Mouth. Rayner tried to leave town the next morning. Packed a bag. Took his cruiser. Said goodbye without saying goodbye. I watched him from the motel window as he pulled onto the main road heading west. I gave him 10 minutes. Then I followed. Not because I wanted to save him. Because I knew he wasn't going to make it. He made it 5 miles. I found his cruiser upside down in a ditch, engine dead, doors locked from the inside. No skid marks. No signs of collision. Just water. The car was filled with it. Almost to the roof. Inside, the radio was still on, sputtering static through a shallow puddle collecting on the dashboard. The seats were soaked. The windshield fogged with breath. And on the rearview mirror, written in condensation, he told. Rayner was gone. Not dead. Gone. Like he'd never been inside at all. But the water remained. I drove back to Blackwater Lake with my foot on the gas and the grip on my iron knife white-knuckled. Now it was just me. And Caleb. And the thing he had become. At the water's edge, I laid out the ritual. Iron circle. Mirror shard at the center. One item belonging to the drowned. I didn't have Caleb's clothes or his body. But I had a piece of the old rope, still damp, still stinking of algae and rust. And lake water. Always the lake water. I poured it around the circle and whispered the invocation. Ojibwe, mostly. Some Latin. Then I waited. At first, nothing. Then ripples. Not from wind. From underneath. The water began to bubble, and the ground beneath me trembled. The rope twitched, as if it were remembering something. Then the air turned cold. Not breeze cold. Deep water cold. Pressure cold. The kind of cold that lives miles beneath the surface. And the lake spoke. No voice. No mouth. It spoke through the ground. A low, distant rumble. You left me. You all left me. Even you. I didn't answer. Didn't have to. The mirror cracked. Hairline fractures spread across the glass like veins. The water around the circle began to recede, upward, flowing against gravity, sucked back toward the center of the lake like it was being drawn into something deep and monstrous. The circle was breaking, and I was about to be pulled with it. I grabbed the mirror and the rope and ran. Up the hill, past the old cabins and the crumbling dock, all the way to the ranger tower that overlooked the lake from the cliffs. The wind picked up. Trees bent. Leaves spiraled like dying birds. And behind me, the lake opened. No other word for it. The water parted, not like Moses and the sea, but like something massive was rising from below. A mouth. A real one. Flesh made of water. Teeth made of broken glass, old bones, and sunken wood. And in the center, Caleb. Or what was left of him. He hung there like a marionette. Arms spread. Head tilted. Eyes completely white. His skin cracked open in places, leaking water. Inside those cracks, more faces. The drowned. Emily. Shelby. Even Rayner. Their eyes stared out from his body, blinking slowly as if they weren't trapped, but awake. Watching. And I finally understood. He wasn't just taking revenge. He was becoming. With each death, each soul, he was absorbing more than memory. He was building something. A god. A thing of wet and sorrow and silence. I pulled the old revolver from my belt. Loaded one silver round. Not for him. For me. If this thing got me, I wasn't going to be part of whatever came next. But before I pulled the hammer back, I saw something. A shimmer in the air. Like light bending in heat. Then, a woman. Faint. Flickering. She stood in front of the lake, hands clasped. Praying. Her face was familiar. Caleb's mother. The woman who came to the police every week for months. The one who never gave up. She was anchoring him. Trying to stop what he'd become. And she was losing. I dropped the gun and grabbed the mirror shard again. Sliced my palm. Let the blood drip onto the glass. Then I spoke. Not to Caleb. To the thing inside him. You're not just rage. You're not just hunger. You're loss. And that makes you human. So remember. Remember who you were. For a second, the air pulsed. The mouth of the lake twitched. The water teeth chattered. And Caleb's eyes flickered. Just once. Then again. Like he was waking up. The wind stopped. The lake stilled. And the figure of his mother walked forward. Toward him. Into the lake. Into him. She didn't scream. Didn't cry. Just held her son. And then they were gone. Sucked below. The mouth closed. The water returned. Quiet. Whole. I sat by the lake until dawn. Didn't move. Didn't breathe much either. But I was still alive. And Caleb? If he crossed over, I hoped he found peace. If he didn't, I hoped he stayed asleep. I left Black Hollow that afternoon. Didn't look back. But I kept the mirror. Cracked, blood-stained. And sometimes, when I'm alone, I catch a glimpse. A boy. Soaking wet. Smiling. And whispering, always. You helped me. So I'll help you too. Part 5. Worse things than drowning. It was supposed to be over. The lake went still. Caleb's soul passed on. The mouths beneath the surface closed. But something didn't sit right. It had followed me home. Not Caleb. Something else. A week after leaving Black Hollow, I started seeing them. Wet footprints in the hallway of my apartment. Even though I lived on the 6th floor. Mirrors fogging up even when the shower was cold. Scratches appearing in the condensation, always the same. You open the door. Not a door. Not metaphorical. The door. Whatever was at the bottom of that lake. Caleb wasn't the only thing down there. And when I forced him to remember to break free, something else slipped through. I tried to convince myself it was PTSD. Stress. Just the usual residue after a close call. But then I started bleeding. Not from cuts. From the pores in my palms. A slow trickle. Black-red. Smelled like the lake. No wound. No pain. Just leaking. That's when I realized it hadn't followed me. It was inside me. I went to an old friend. Reverend Esau. Pentecostal exorcist. Used to be a drunk, then a preacher, then something in between. He owed me a favor from a job in Tennessee where something in a cornfield sang to children until they clawed their own ears off. He met me in a roadside chapel outside Baton Rouge. Lit candles. Opened his Bible. Said prayers I didn't recognize. Then he looked at me. And paled. Jack, I don't think this is a haunting. What is it then? I asked, sweat slicking my shirt. He lit another candle and placed it in front of the cracked mirror I'd brought from Black Hollow. Something came through. Something old. Maybe older than God. Yeah? Then what the hell do we do? He shook his head. There's worse things than possession. And you're not possessed. What am I? He didn't answer. He just reached for the mirror. The second his fingers brushed the glass, he screamed. Collapsed. Eyes rolled back. Mouth filling with water that wasn't there. His chest convulsed, back arching. When he finally stopped, he whispered, You're a lock. And it's trying to turn you open. I buried Esau the next morning. No funeral. No words. Just dirt and regret. I burned the chapel down after. Didn't help. I could still hear the whispering. But now it was closer. Inside my skull. Syllables not meant for humans. Names that shouldn't be spoken. But I started saying them anyway. In my sleep. In the mirror. Even in coffee shop bathrooms. I drove to a lake near my childhood home. Not Blackwater, this one was small, shallow. I thought maybe it would help. Cleanse me. Undo whatever was happening. I waded in. Up to my waist. Then to my chest. And the water rose. Not the lake. The water itself. It curled upward. Into my nose. My mouth. I couldn't scream. Only hear. And what I heard wasn't words. It was hunger. I woke up on the shoreline hours later. Naked. Teeth chattering. And on my chest? A handprint. Too small to be mine. Too long to be human. Something used Caleb. Or maybe he was it in part. But whatever ancient thing lay beneath the lake, in the silt, The bones, the rot, it didn't leave with him. It only cracked the surface. And I was the vessel. The souvenir. I started driving without stopping. No music. No food. No plan. Just asphalt and fear. Until I got the call. No number. Just static. Then a voice. Jack, it's not done. It was Caleb. Or what was left of him. You opened the bottom. Now it wants the top. He told me about the dreams. People in Black Hollow waking up drenched. Mouths full of mud. Children sleepwalking into the lake. Eyes open but not blinking. One girl came back. But she'd forgotten how to breathe. As if the lake had rewritten her lungs. It's spreading. Not a haunting. Not a curse. A contagion. Spiritual rot. Something old and angry and starving. It had been sealed below for centuries. Maybe longer. And now it had a taste. I found myself driving back toward Black Hollow. I told myself it was to finish where I started. But deep down, I think I was being pulled. Called. Like something in the water knew my name. Not just Jack. The true name. The one I hadn't heard since the day I was born. The name I was never supposed to know. But the lake whispered it. And I listened. Part 6. The Name That Waits Below. You ever wake up with a word in your head? One you've never heard before, but somehow it feels ancient. Like it was carved into your bones long before you had thoughts of your own. I woke up on the edge of Blackwater Lake with that word echoing in my skull. Knocketh. It wasn't Caleb's name. It wasn't even human. It was the thing beneath him. The thing that wore his pain like a mask. And it was awake. I don't remember driving to the lake. But there I was. Standing ankle-deep in that cold, dead water, clothes soaked, skin pruned, eyes bloodshot. Behind me, the forest didn't move. No birds. No wind. Just watching. The lake felt different now, not still, not angry. Expectant. Like a mouth waiting for communion. I walked the shoreline. Same path I took weeks ago when all I wanted was to help a dead boy find peace. Instead, I cracked the lid on something so much worse. There were footprints in the mud again. Small ones. Bare. But they didn't come from the water. They went into it. Children. It was feeding. Again. At the ranger station I found maps. Water depth surveys. The lake, it turns out, used to be a mine. Before that, something else. A crater maybe. The locals never dug too deep. Called it cursed. The native tribes avoided it completely. Called it a Wanajish, which roughly translates to the water with no bottom. But I saw something on one of the older maps that didn't match the current ones. An island. Small. Rocky. Center of the lake. Now? Nothing. Just deep black water. I knew what I had to do. By nightfall, I had a boat. Rusty old flat bottom tied to the ranger dock. I brought my gear, salt, iron, the cracked mirror, and the revolver. This time, I wasn't aiming to fight. I was going down. Not just metaphorically. If the name wanted to be spoken, it had to be met. Face to face. Halfway across the lake, the sky changed. The stars vanished. Clouds didn't roll in, they were swallowed. And the water began to pulse. Like a heartbeat. Like something vast was breathing below. I dropped anchor. No resistance. No sound of it hitting bottom. Just slack rope. Then I leaned over the edge. And the water looked back. Not a reflection. Not even Caleb. But it. Knocketh. It had no true form, but I saw glimpses, barnacled eyes, teeth made of vertebrae, tendrils coiled with children's voices, limbs made of drowned prayers. It had been starving in the dark for centuries, feeding off scraps of grief, loss, and betrayal. Caleb's death was a feast. But it wanted more. It wanted the world. Through me. The lock. I took the mirror. Held it over the water. Spoke the name. Knocketh. The lake exploded. Not up, inward. The water collapsed into itself, spiraling like a whirlpool straight into hell. The boat tilted. My body seized. And the world flipped inside out. I don't remember drowning. Only that I arrived. Beneath the lake wasn't a place. It was a mind. A memory made flesh. I stood in the mind that became the lake. Saw the first people who found it, coal-dusted faces, wide eyes, too much silence. They heard voices in the caverns. The deeper they dug, the more they dreamed. Of water that didn't exist. Of something below the rock, whispering in syllables that bled. They tried to bury it. Flooded the shaft. Then left. But the thing waited. And when Caleb died, betrayed, broken, screaming for help, it had its vessel. It spoke to me then. Not with words. But through pain. The pain of everyone it had touched. Emily. Shelby. Rayner. Their memories exploded behind my eyes. Not as ghosts. As echoes. I felt Caleb's lungs burst. His bones crack. His thoughts fracture as the water swallowed him, and the light dimmed. And through that pain, Knocketh wrapped around me. Be the mouth, it said. Speak my hunger. But I did something it didn't expect. I remembered. Caleb's mother. Her prayers. Her refusal to forget. The human part. The one thing it could never devour. Love. I screamed her name. And the mirror cracked again. Then shattered. A flash of light cut through the lake like a blade. The water screamed. Not Caleb. Not the victims. The thing itself. Its name unraveling. Its hunger collapsing. It wasn't just pain that fed it. It was the forgetting. The isolation. But when you name something, truly name it, you give it. Part 7. I buried the mirror. Deep. Under salt. Under iron. I marked the ground with a cross made of driftwood from the lake's edge. Not because I'm religious. Because I needed something to tell me it was over. But 3 nights ago, I woke to the sound of scraping. Not in my room. Under it. Something dragging nails through the subfloor. Like it forgot the way in. Or was remembering. The town of Black Hollow is quieter now. Fewer whispers. No more kids sleepwalking into the water. But the lake's still there. And if you stand at the shoreline on a windless night, you'll hear it breathing again. Not loudly. Not angrily. But regularly. As if it's sleeping. And dreaming. Of me. I went back. I had to. You don't walk away from something like that and pretend the world keeps spinning the same. So I parked by the ranger station. Walked the trail through the trees until I reached the water. Brought flowers. Caleb deserved that much. There was no headstone. No grave. But I knew where he was. The lake remembered. As I stood there, watching ripples lap at the shore, something floated to the surface. A piece of wood. Rotten. Smooth. It bumped against my boot like it wanted to be noticed. I bent down. It was a piece of the boat. The one those boys took him out on. The one he died on. I picked it up. Immediately my fingers stung. Water blisters formed along the edges of my palm. Like holding it was enough to remind me. I took the wood and added it to the cross. Lashed it tight with twine soaked in salt and vinegar. Then I left it there, a marker at the edge of the lake. A warning. A memory. A promise. But the dreams came back. Not drowning this time. Rising. I dreamt of being pulled up from the dark, the surface breaking above like thin ice, air flooding in like fire. But the body I was in wasn't mine. The arms were too long, the skin too loose. And when I looked down into the water, the reflection that stared back. It wasn't just Caleb. It was everyone. All of them. All the ones it had fed on. All the ones it still carried. That's when I understood. It didn't die. It was changed. And now it had a shape. A name. A mouth. But also a face. Mine. I woke to find my hands pruned. Not from sweat. From water. Fresh. Lake cold. My shoes sat by the bed, muddy and wet. And carved into the wall above my pillow, in long, deliberate gouges. We are one. The lock turns both ways. I've been seeing things in mirrors again. Not Caleb. Not Nakath. Me. But not quite. The smile's too wide. The eyes wrong. Reflecting too much. Like there's depth behind them. Depth that isn't mine. And tonight, I saw the driftwood cross again. But not outside. In my apartment. Soaked. Leaning against the mirror. And I swear, it was growing. Part 7, the driftwood cross. Roots curling through the floor. Splinters twitching like veins. The thing at the bottom of the lake didn't want to escape. It wanted a door. And I gave it one. Now it doesn't need the lake anymore. It has me. And wherever I go, it goes too. This isn't a story anymore. It's a warning. If you find water where it doesn't belong, Dripping mirrors, wet dreams, puddles that don't dry. Walk away. Run. Don't try to help. Don't say its name. Don't dig too deep. Because some things don't drown. They wait. Part 8. Where the sky touches the bottom. It rained for 7 days. No thunder. No lightning. Just constant, endless water. The kind that seeps into your bones. They say the rain is normal this time of year. They're wrong. This isn't weather. It's memory. The lake is remembering itself. And it's remembering me. The cross is gone. The one I made from the driftwood and rope. It didn't rot. It didn't wash away. It walked. I found its imprint in the mud behind my apartment. Long, dragging scratches. Like it had limbs now. And wait. Last night, I heard a splash outside my bedroom window. 6 floors up. I leaned out and looked down. The street below was dry. But the glass? The outside of the window? Soaked. With ripples running across it. Like someone had thrown a stone into the air. Or like the sky itself had turned to water. I went back to Blackwater Lake one last time. Not with tools. Not with weapons. With resignation. You don't kill something like this. You return it. Or you join it. The water was high. Too high. It had swallowed the trail, the ranger station, even the dock. And in the distance, where no land should be, an island. The island. Back again. A jagged crown of rock and driftwood, rising from the center of the lake like a spine from a corpse. The thing was calling me home. I walked. Not by choice. The water didn't resist me. It parted. My boots sank, but I kept moving. Each step felt heavier. Like the lake was climbing up through me. Like I was becoming the vessel again. The island was wrong. Too quiet. No birds. No breeze. Just the sound of breathing. From beneath the rocks. From inside them. And at the center, a pool. Perfectly still. Mirroring the sky. But not the real sky. The one it remembered. Red. Veined. Watching. I saw myself in the pool. But not my reflection. My replacement. It stood there, grinning. Waterlogged. Dripping. Its mouth opened and a voice came out. Not mine. Not Caleb's. Something older. Dry. Like wind over bone. You opened the lock. Now we open the rest. The pool rippled, and shapes rose from the depths. Not bodies. Masks. Each one a face it had worn. Each one mine. Twisted in grief, rage, horror. Dozens of me. Dozens of choices. And one truth. I wasn't the only Jack Mercer it had touched. This had happened before. Other timelines. Other lakes. Other bottoms. Each time, a different version of me tried to stop it. Each time, the door cracked wider. This wasn't a haunting. It was a loop. And I was the fail-safe. Or maybe the fuse. It didn't matter anymore. Because I understood the last piece. Where the sky touches the bottom. That's not a metaphor. It's a place. A convergence. Where thought becomes flesh. Where memory becomes God. And I was standing in it. I knelt by the pool. Spoke the name one last time. Knocketh. It didn't roar. Didn't scream. It smiled. And reached up. The water pulled me under. But this time, I didn't fight. There was no bottom. There never had been. Just a slow drift. Until I landed somewhere between heartbeat and thought. I saw everything. The first miner who heard its whisper. The first mother who felt her child's dreams drowning. The priest who baptized himself in salt. The boy named Caleb, lungs filled with betrayal. And myself. Over and over. Living. Dying. Failing. Opening. Until one version of me, this one, made a different choice. I spoke not its name. I spoke mine. I am Jack Mercer. I choose to remember. I choose to close the door. And for the first time in 100 lifetimes, the bottom blinked. I woke in the dirt. The lake was gone. Not dried up. Erased. Like it had never been. Black Hollow is gone too. The forest replaced it. No town. No trail. Just trees. And silence. Real silence. But sometimes, when it rains, I catch my reflection in the puddle. And for a second, the grin's too wide. The sky's too red. And the water? The water remembers.